They made her watch as they burned her mother's wedding dress in the fireplace, the silk turning to ash while her stepsisters took selfies with the flames. 5 years she had lived as a ghost in her father's mansion, 5 years of eating scraps off the floor like a dog, 5 years since Constance had murdered her father and stolen everything. Tonight was supposed to be different. Tonight, she had finally found the poison hidden in Constance's jewelry box, the same poison that had killed her father. Tonight, she was going to end it all by drinking it herself. The vial was already at her lips when the chandelier began to shake. The windows rattled. Every piece of glass in the mansion vibrated with a frequency that made her teeth ache. Then silence. Dead, complete silence. Like the world had stopped breathing. That was when she heard the footsteps approaching the front door. Footsteps that sounded like death itself had come to Savannah. She sat in the corner wearing black like a ghost in her own home, her shaved head bowed in shame, while her stepsisters laughed in silk dresses upstairs. She had forgotten what sunlight felt like on her skin. Then the front door exploded off its hinges, and a man with white hair and ancient eyes stepped through the smoke, looked directly at her, and smiled. Well, well. It seems I have found what everyone in Savannah has been whispering about. The corner had become her universe. Wren Ashford pressed her spine against the cold wall of the Ashford mansion, her knees pulled to her chest, her fingers tracing meaningless patterns on the dusty floor she was no longer allowed to walk freely upon. The black dress hung on her thin frame like a burial shroud, the fabric rough and itchy against her skin. Constance had chosen it specifically for that reason. Comfort was not something Wren deserved. She touched her shaved head with trembling fingers, still feeling phantom strands of the golden hair her mother had once brushed every night before bed. Her mother would sit behind her on the vanity stool, humming old hymns, running the brush through waves of honey-colored silk while whispering about how beautiful her daughter would become someday. That was before the cancer came like a thief and stole everything. 6 months after they buried her mother in the Bonaventure Cemetery, her father remarried Constance Pruitt, a widow with 2 daughters and a hunger in her eyes that Wren recognized too late as greed. Constance smiled for the cameras, played the loving stepmother at charity galas, and waited. Then one quiet Tuesday morning, Wren found her father dead in his sleep. Heart failure, the doctors said. Natural causes. Wren knew better. She saw how Constance smiled at the funeral. She noticed the empty vial hidden in the bathroom trash. But she was 18 with no proof and no power. The will had been changed 3 weeks before his death. Everything went to Constance. The mansion. The foundation. The money. And Wren became property. Now she was 23 years old and invisible in her own home. The rules were simple and absolute. She was not to speak unless spoken to. She was not to leave the house. She was not to look her stepsisters in the eye. And after the incident last spring, when a delivery driver from Amazon had complimented her smile and asked for her name, Constance had taken the shears to her beautiful hair while Margot and Delia held her down. They shaved her head while she screamed. Then they dressed her in black and assigned her the corner. From upstairs, Wren heard her stepsisters shrieking with laughter now, their voices carrying through the old Savannah estate like nails scraping against glass. They were preparing for tonight. Some wealthy donor was visiting the city, interested in their family's historic preservation foundation. Constance had spent $40,000 on new gowns from a boutique on Broughton Street. The finest champagne had been ordered. Caterers from one of the best restaurants in the historic district were setting up in the grand dining hall. Wren was not invited. Wren was never invited. She was only brought out to clean, to serve, to kneel, and to disappear. Her stomach growled. She had not eaten since yesterday morning, and even that was only stale bread and water that Margot had thrown at her feet like she was feeding a stray dog. Wren closed her eyes and pressed her forehead against her knees. She wondered if ghosts could cry, because that is what she had become. A ghost haunting the ruins of her own life. Meanwhile, 300 miles away, a black Rolls-Royce Phantom cut through the Georgia night like a blade through silk. The car moved with unnatural silence on the empty highway, its headlights slicing through fog that seemed to part in reverence. Inside the vehicle, the temperature was cold. Unnaturally cold. The kind of cold that seeped into your bones and whispered of ancient things that should not exist. In the back seat, Valerian Cross sat perfectly still, his white hair cascading past his shoulders like frozen moonlight, his pale fingers wrapped around a crystal glass of something far too dark to be wine. His eyes, pale gray with flecks of silver, stared out the window at the passing darkness with the patience of something that had watched empires rise and fall like ocean tides. He had lived for over 800 years. He had ruled territories that modern maps had forgotten, walked through plagues and wars and revolutions without breaking stride. He had made kings kneel and watched their bloodlines wither when they displeased him. He had buried more enemies than most graveyards could hold, and he remembered every single one of their screaming faces. Family was everything to Valerian. Loyalty was oxygen. And betrayal was a debt he collected across generations, with interest. Tonight, he was bored. His right hand, a vampire named Theodric who had served the Cross bloodline for 3 centuries, glanced nervously in the rearview mirror. Theodric knew that look in his master's eyes. It was the look that preceded either tremendous generosity or unimaginable violence. Sometimes both. "My lord," Theodric began carefully, "the Ashford Foundation has been laundering money for 3 of our rival covens for the past decade. They believe they are protected by human politics and old Southern money. Constance Ashford, the current matriarch, considers herself untouchable because of her late husband's connections to the city council and the historical society." Valerian did not respond immediately. He swirled the dark liquid in his glass, watching it coat the crystal like blood sliding down marble. Then he smiled. It was slow. It was deliberate. And it was the kind of smile that made ancient vampires fall to their knees and pray to gods they had abandoned centuries ago. "Does she now?" His voice was velvet wrapped around a threat, honey poured over a razor blade. Untouchable. What a fascinating word. It implies that no one has tried hard enough. He finished the drink and set the glass aside. "Theodric, tell me about the family. Every member. Every secret. Every sin they think is buried." Theodric swallowed. "There is the wife, Constance. 2 daughters from her previous marriage, Margot and Delia. Shallow, cruel, unremarkable. And there is..." He hesitated. Valerian's eyes sharpened. "There is what?" "A stepdaughter, my lord. The biological daughter of the late Harold Ashford. Her name is Wren. The household staff we interviewed claim she is kept hidden. Treated as a servant. There are rumors of abuse, isolation. Some say Constance is afraid of her." "Afraid?" Valerian leaned forward, intrigued for the first time in decades. Why would a woman who considers herself untouchable be afraid of a hidden girl? Theodric shook his head. "I do not know, my lord. But the people of Savannah whisper about her. They remember her from before. They say she was kind. Radiant. That she had a light about her that made strangers stop and stare. Then she vanished from public life, and the whispers grew louder." Valerian sat back, a new hunger flickering behind his ancient eyes. "A hidden light in a house of darkness," he murmured. "How poetic. How wasteful." The Rolls-Royce turned toward Savannah. And in her corner, Wren shivered without knowing why. "If you have made it this far, you are already part of this story. You felt something stir in your chest. Do not lie to yourself and do not lie to me. Hit that subscribe button right now and join the fastest growing vampire love story community on this entire platform. I see you watching silently in the shadows, but I need you to step into the light. Drop a comment and tell me where you are watching from because I genuinely want to know what corner of the world is falling in love with this story tonight. Now tell me honestly. If someone stole your beauty, your voice, and your place in the world, would you still have hope? Or would you have given up by now?" The Ashford mansion glittered like a poisoned jewel that evening. Crystal chandeliers cast dancing light across the grand foyer where Savannah's elite mingled with champagne flutes and false smiles. Constance Ashford floated through the crowd in a crimson gown that cost more than most families earned in a year, her silver hair pinned in an elaborate updo, her lips stretched in a practiced smile that never reached her cold eyes. Margot and Delia flanked her like twin vultures in designer dresses, scanning the room for wealthy bachelors and opportunities to climb higher on the social ladder they worshipped. "Mother," Delia whispered, "when is this mysterious donor arriving?" People are getting restless. Constance checked her diamond-encrusted watch. He will arrive when he arrives. Men of significant wealth operate on their own schedules. We simply accommodate. In the corner of the kitchen, hidden behind the service entrance, Wren knelt on the cold tile floor polishing silver that would never touch her lips. Constance had dragged her from her corner specifically for this task, reminding her that usefulness was the only reason she remained breathing. Wren's hands moved mechanically, her shaved head bowed, her black dress stained with silver polish. Through the cracked kitchen door, she could hear the laughter and clinking glasses of a world she once belonged to. She remembered being 12 years old, standing beside her father at events just like this one, wearing a pink dress with ribbons in her golden hair. He would introduce her proudly to everyone. "This is my daughter Wren. Is she not the most beautiful girl in all of Georgia?" A tear slipped down her cheek and landed on the silver platter. She wiped it away quickly. Tears were not permitted. Then the front doors exploded inward. Not opened. Not pushed. Exploded. The massive oak doors, which had stood since 1842, flew off their iron hinges and crashed into the marble foyer with a sound like thunder clapping inside a cathedral. Guests screamed. Champagne glasses shattered on the floor. The string quartet stopped mid-note, their bows frozen in the air. Through the smoke and splinters stepped a figure that did not belong to this century. Valerian Cross walked into the Ashford mansion like he was returning to a home he had conquered long ago. His white hair flowed behind him like liquid moonlight, untouched by the debris swirling in the air. His black suit was tailored so perfectly it seemed painted onto his powerful frame. His pale eyes swept across the terrified crowd with the lazy amusement of a lion observing mice arguing over cheese. Behind him, Theodric and 4 other vampires in matching black suits entered in formation, their movements synchronized like a deadly ballet. The silence was absolute. Then Valerian smiled, and somewhere in the room, a woman fainted. "Good evening," he said, his voice carrying effortlessly to every corner of the grand space without him raising it even slightly. "I do hope I am not interrupting anything important." "Actually, no. I hope I am. Interrupting important things is rather my specialty." He plucked a champagne flute from the trembling hand of a nearby waiter and sniffed it with theatrical disdain. "Domestic. How disappointing. I expected better from a family that has been stealing from my organization for the past decade." He dropped the glass. It shattered at his feet, and no one breathed. But then again, expectations are the mother of all disappointments, are they not? Constance Ashford stepped forward, her face cycling through terror, confusion, and forced composure in rapid succession. She had built her entire life on control, on knowing every variable, on never being caught off guard. She was drowning now, and everyone could see it. "I am Constance Ashford," she managed, her voice cracking only slightly. "This is my home. Who do you think you are, destroying my property and threatening my guests?" Valerian tilted his head like a curious predator. "Who do I think I am?" He laughed softly, and it was the most terrifying sound anyone in that room had ever heard. "Madam, I do not think. I know. I am Valerian Cross. I have gone by many names across many centuries. Some called me the White Devil of Prague. Others knew me as the Merchant of Nightmares. Your great-great-grandfather, before I ended his bloodline's luck, simply called me sir while he begged on his knees." He stepped closer to Constance, and she stumbled backward despite herself. "I am the reason your husband's foundation exists. The money that built this grotesque monument to mediocrity flowed through channels I created before your grandmother was a sinful thought in your great-grandmother's mind. And you, Constance, have been biting the hand that has allowed you to feed for far too long." Margot grabbed her mother's arm. "Mother, what is he talking about?" Delia was already crying, her mascara running down her cheeks. Valerian ignored them both. His eyes had begun to wander, scanning the room with increasing disinterest, until something caught his attention. A sound. Not a scream or a gasp or a whimper like everyone else was producing. A heartbeat. Slow. Steady. Unafraid. Coming from behind the kitchen door. Valerian held up one finger, and instantly everyone in the room froze as if he had pressed pause on reality itself. "One moment," he said pleasantly. "I hear something far more interesting than your pathetic excuses." He walked toward the kitchen, his footsteps echoing like a countdown. Theodric moved to follow, but Valerian waved him back without looking. He pushed open the kitchen door. And there she was, kneeling on the cold floor in a stained black dress, a silver platter in her raw, reddened hands, her shaved head bowed, her shoulders hunched against a world that had beaten her down for 5 long years. But she was not cowering. She was not crying. She was looking directly at him. Her eyes, large and brown and filled with something that had survived every attempt to extinguish it, met his ancient gaze without flinching. Valerian Cross, who had made emperors stammer and warriors flee, felt something shift in his chest for the first time in 400 years. He did not speak immediately. He simply looked at her, truly looked, the way no one had bothered to look at her since her father died. He saw the remnants of beauty they had tried to destroy. He saw the dignity they had failed to break. He saw a fire burning low but still alive behind those defiant eyes. Well, he said softly, his voice losing its theatrical edge and becoming something almost gentle. "It seems I have found what everyone in Savannah has been whispering about." Wren did not look away. She could not explain why, but she felt no fear. For the first time in 5 years, she felt something else entirely. She felt seen. "They told me there was a hidden daughter," Valerian continued, crouching down to her level, careless of his expensive suit touching the dirty floor. "They did not tell me she had the eyes of a queen forced to dress as a beggar." From the doorway, Constance's shrill voice cut through. "Get away from her. She is no one. She is nothing. Just a servant." Valerian did not turn around. His eyes remained locked on Wren's. "Nothing," he repeated, and the word dripped with contempt for the woman who had spoken it. "Madam, I have lived for 800 years. I have learned to recognize value that fools overlook. And I am looking at something far more precious than anything else in this entire house." He extended his hand toward Wren. "Come with me." Wren stared at the extended hand like it was a serpent coiled to strike. 5 years of conditioning screamed at her to refuse, to lower her eyes, to remember her place. Good things did not happen to girls like her. Kindness was a trap. Hope was a lie told by people who had never truly suffered. "I cannot," she whispered, her voice hoarse from disuse. Speaking without permission would earn her a punishment she could not afford. Valerian's expression did not change, but something flickered in his pale eyes. Surprise, perhaps. Or recognition of something broken that required patience to mend. "Cannot or will not?" he asked quietly. Before Wren could answer, Constance shoved her way into the kitchen, her face twisted with rage barely concealed beneath her practiced mask. Margot and Delia crowded behind her, their earlier tears replaced with the familiar cruelty Wren knew too well. "Mr. Cross," Constance said, forcing her voice into something resembling composure, "I must insist you leave the help alone. Wren is disturbed. Mentally unwell. She requires structure and discipline, which I provide out of the goodness of my heart. Her father entrusted her care to me before he died." "Entrusted," Valerian repeated slowly, rising to his full height. He still did not look at Constance. His attention remained fixed on Wren, who had begun to tremble. "How charitable of you. Tell me, does your charity usually involve shaving heads and forcing young women to kneel on stone floors?" Constance's mouth opened and closed soundlessly. Delia, foolish and drunk on expensive wine, stepped forward. "She deserves it. She used to walk around here like she owned the place, flaunting her looks, making everyone love her. It was disgusting. Was it now?" Valerian finally turned to face them, and the temperature in the kitchen dropped 20 degrees in an instant. Frost formed on the windows. Their breath became visible clouds. Margot grabbed her sister's arm, suddenly aware they had crossed a line drawn in blood. But Valerian did not strike. He simply smiled that terrible smile and returned his attention to Wren. "The choice remains yours," he said to her. "I am offering you my hand. What you do with it is entirely your decision. But know this, I have never made this offer before. I do not extend mercy to strangers. Yet something about you suggests you are not a stranger at all. Wren's hand twitched toward his. Every fiber of her being wanted to reach out, to grab onto this impossible lifeline thrown into her drowning existence. But fear held her paralyzed. What if this was another cruelty? What if he was worse than Constance? What if she took his hand and discovered that the corner had been the safest place after all? I need time, she breathed. Valerian nodded once. Then time you shall have. But not here. He straightened and turned to Constance with the casual authority of someone used to reshaping reality to his preferences. I am relocating this conversation to somewhere more appropriate. Your grand dining hall should suffice. Wren will join us. She will sit at the table. She will be fed. And we will discuss the rather substantial debt your family owes mine. She will do no such thing, Constance hissed, her mask finally cracking completely. This is my house. She is my responsibility. You have no right. Rights? Valerian interrupted, his voice soft and deadly. Madam, I do not deal in rights. I deal in power. And in this room, in this city, in this entire region of the country you call the South, I have more power in my smallest finger than your entire bloodline has accumulated in 2 centuries of scheming and theft. He snapped his fingers. Theodric appeared in the doorway instantly. Prepare a seat at the head of the table. Clear these vultures away from the prime positions. And bring me the contracts that detail exactly how much the Ashford Foundation has stolen from our accounts. Yes, my lord. Constance was shaking now, her carefully constructed empire crumbling around her designer shoes. You cannot do this. I already have. Valerian looked back at Wren one final time. I will be in the dining hall. You may join me when you are ready. Or you may return to your corner and wait for these parasites to drain whatever remains of your life. The choice, as I said, is yours. He walked out, leaving Wren kneeling on the kitchen floor with her stepfamily circling like wounded animals contemplating a final, desperate attack. The moment Valerian's footsteps faded, Constance lunged forward and grabbed Wren by the collar of her black dress, yanking her close enough that Wren could smell the champagne on her breath and the rage beneath her expensive perfume. You will not go out there, Constance snarled. You will not embarrass me. You will not speak. If you do, I will make the last 5 years look like paradise. Do you understand me? Wren said nothing. For the first time in 5 years, silence felt like defiance. Wren found herself sitting at the grand dining table without remembering how she got there. One moment she had been on the kitchen floor with Constance's threats ringing in her ears. The next, Theodric had appeared like a shadow given form, his hand gentle but firm on her elbow, guiding her through the service corridor and into the dining hall while Constance screamed threats that died in her throat every time she tried to follow. Now Wren sat 3 seats away from Valerian Cross, her hands folded in her lap, her body rigid with the tension of occupying a space she had been forbidden from entering for half a decade. The guests had been dismissed. The catering staff had vanished. The grand hall that had been filled with Savannah's elite now held only Valerian at the head of the table, Theodric standing behind him like a statue carved from ice, and Wren, drowning in a chair that felt like a throne she had no right to claim. Constance, Margot, and Delia sat on the opposite side, as far from Valerian as the table's length allowed. They looked like defendants awaiting sentencing. Valerian swirled wine in a crystal glass, studying it with the focus of someone examining a rare artifact. He had not acknowledged Wren's arrival with words, but she felt his awareness of her like heat from a fire she was not allowed to approach. Let us discuss terms, Valerian said finally, breaking the suffocating silence. The Ashford Foundation has laundered approximately $4.7 million through offshore accounts connected to rival covens operating in Charleston, Atlanta, and Miami. You did this believing my organization had grown complacent. Believing I would not notice. He set down the wine glass with deliberate precision. I notice everything. Constance had regained some composure, her hands clasped on the table like she was leading a business negotiation rather than fighting for survival. If there have been accounting errors, I am certain we can resolve them professionally. The foundation has resources. We can arrange payment plans. Payment plans, Valerian repeated, his lips curving into something that was not quite a smile. How delightfully human. You steal millions and offer to return it in installments like a teenager paying off a car. What do you want? Margot blurted out, her voice shrill with fear. Valerian's gaze shifted to her, and she shrank back as if he had physically struck her. What do I want? He leaned back in his chair, his white hair spilling over the dark leather like moonlight on a midnight lake. I want many things. I want competence from those I do business with. I want loyalty, which seems to be a dying commodity in this age of selfies and Tesla electric cars. I want people to remember that actions have consequences, and debts are paid in full. His eyes drifted to Wren, and suddenly the air felt different. Charged. But most immediately, I want to understand why a family that prides itself on social status and appearances has been keeping a treasure locked in a closet. Wren felt her pulse quicken. She kept her eyes down, afraid that meeting his gaze again would shatter whatever fragile protection this bizarre situation offered. She is not a treasure, Delia snapped. She is a burden our mother took on out of kindness when our stepfather died. She should be grateful we did not throw her into the streets. Grateful, Valerian said softly, and the word carried the weight of glaciers shifting. Theodric, make a note. When we are finished here, I want a full investigation into Harold Ashford's death. Natural causes, was it? How convenient. Constance went pale. You have no authority to investigate anything. We are protected by... By whom? Valerian interrupted. Your city council friends? Your historical society connections? Shall I list the members of both organizations who owe me favors that span generations? Or shall we skip the performance and acknowledge that you are protected by absolutely nothing? He stood, and the movement was so fluid it seemed choreographed. He walked slowly around the table, his footsteps echoing on the marble floor, until he stood directly behind Wren's chair. She froze. Stand up, he said quietly. It was not a command. Not quite. But it carried expectation. Wren's legs obeyed before her mind could catch up. She rose on trembling legs, her hands clutching the black fabric of her dress, her eyes still downcast. Valerian circled her slowly, and she felt his gaze like hands tracing her outline without touching. They shaved your head to hide your beauty, he observed. Dressed you in mourning clothes to make you invisible. Assigned you a corner to break your spirit. But they failed, did they not? You are still here. Still standing. Still breathing fire behind those remarkable eyes. Wren's breath hitched. Look at me, Valerian said. She is not permitted to, Constance began. I was not speaking to you. Silence crashed down like a guillotine blade. Wren slowly, painfully, raised her eyes to meet Valerian's. He was closer than she expected, standing mere inches away, tall enough that she had to tilt her head back to hold his gaze. This close, she could see that his pale eyes were not simply gray. They held centuries. Lifetimes. Moments of beauty and oceans of blood. She should have been terrified. She was not. There she is, Valerian murmured, and something in his voice softened in a way that made Theodric's eyes widen with shock. The girl Savannah remembers. Tell me your name. Your full name. Wren, she whispered. Wren Ashford. Wren, he repeated, tasting the syllables. A small bird with a persistent song. How fitting. How utterly fitting. He reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and gently touched the side of her shaved head where golden hair had once fallen in waves. His fingers were cold. Not unpleasantly so. Like marble that had been resting in shade. They tried to clip your wings, he said quietly, his voice meant only for her now despite the audience watching in horror. But wings grow back. Everything grows back if given the proper environment. Wren felt tears prick her eyes and hated herself for it. Why are you doing this? She asked, her voice barely audible. Valerian's expression shifted into something she could not read. Amusement mixed with curiosity mixed with something darker that felt almost like recognition. Because, Wren Ashford, I despise waste. And you are being wasted. Valerian stepped back, releasing Wren from the intensity of his proximity, and turned to face Constance with an expression that promised nothing good. Tell me about Harold Ashford's final days, he said casually, as if asking about the weather. Was he ill? Did he complain of symptoms? Or did he simply go to sleep one evening and fail to wake? Constance's jaw tightened. My husband's death was ruled natural causes by the county medical examiner. I will not sit here and be accused. You will sit exactly where I tell you to sit and answer exactly what I ask you to answer, Valerian interrupted, his voice dropping into a register that vibrated through the floor. Or I will have Theodric extract the information in ways that will make you beg for the mercy of simple questions. Theodric smiled. It was not a pleasant sight. Wren found her voice, surprising herself. He was poisoned. Every head in the room turned toward her. She had not spoken more than necessary in 5 years. She had learned that words brought punishment, that silence was survival. But something about Valerian's presence made her feel like the rules had changed. Like the board had been flipped and a new game had begun. What did you say? Valerian asked, his tone sharp with interest. Wren's hands trembled, but she forced herself to continue. My father was healthy. He ran 5 miles every morning. He had a physical 2 weeks before he died. The doctors said his heart was strong. Then one night, he just stopped breathing. Her voice cracked, but she pushed through. I found a vial in the bathroom trash the next morning. Small. Glass. It smelled like almonds and something chemical. I tried to tell the police, but Constance had already made the funeral arrangements. The body was cremated within 48 hours. There was no autopsy. You lying little, Margot started to rise from her chair. Valerian held up one finger, and Margot froze mid-motion as if an invisible hand had shoved her back down. Continue, he said to Wren. Constance changed the will 3 weeks before he died, Wren continued, the words pouring out now like water through a broken dam. My father had always told me everything would be mine. The house. The foundation. He said it was my mother's legacy, and he was just protecting it until I was old enough. Then suddenly there was a new will, and I got nothing. She looked directly at Constance, and for the first time in 5 years, she did not lower her gaze. You killed him. You married him, made him trust you, changed his will, and then you killed him. The silence that followed was absolute. Constance's face had gone from pale to gray. Margot and Delia looked at their mother with expressions somewhere between horror and disbelief, as if seeing her clearly for the first time. These are the fantasies of a damaged mind, Constance finally managed, but her voice lacked conviction. She has always been unstable. Prone to delusions. This is exactly why we had to isolate her, for her own safety and... Enough, Valerian said quietly. The single word carried such weight that Constance's mouth snapped shut like a trap. Valerian walked to the window overlooking the garden, his white hair catching the moonlight streaming through the glass. He stood there for a long moment, his back to the room, his hands clasped behind him. When he spoke, his voice was distant, as if he were speaking to ghosts only he could see. I had a sister once, he said. Her name was Sienna. She had dark hair and green eyes and a laugh that could make flowers bloom in winter. She was kind. Too kind for the world we were born into. Too trusting. He paused, and Wren saw his reflection in the glass. His expression was carved from stone and sorrow. A man married her for her inheritance. A minor noble with debts and ambitions. He was charming. Patient. He made her believe in love and safety and all the pretty lies that cruel people use to trap good hearts. Theodric closed his eyes, clearly familiar with this story and dreading its conclusion. 6 months after the wedding, Sienna fell ill, Valerian continued. The physicians could not explain it. She wasted away over 3 weeks, crying out in pain, begging me to make it stop. I held her hand while she died. I was 19 years old and powerless to save her. He turned from the window, and his eyes were no longer merely ancient. They were graveyards. It took me 2 years to discover the truth. Her husband had been poisoning her slowly with arsenic mixed into her evening tea. He remarried within 4 months of her funeral. A wealthier woman. He did the same thing to her 7 years later. Valerian's smile was a blade made of ice and fury. I found him in Venice in the year of our Lord 1372. He was an old man by then, surrounded by wealth stolen from the women he had murdered. I did not kill him quickly. I made it last. And when he finally died, I made certain his sons suffered as well. And their sons. I hunted that bloodline through 4 generations until the name itself was wiped from history. He looked at Constance, and she shrank back as if trying to merge with her chair. I do not forgive, Valerian said softly. I do not forget. And I do not allow the guilty to prosper. He turned to Wren, and his expression shifted into something almost gentle. You remind me of her. Of Sienna. That same light. That same kindness that survives despite every cruelty inflicted upon it. Wren felt tears streaming down her face now, unable to stop them. I am not kind, she whispered. I am broken. Broken things can be mended, Valerian replied. And sometimes they become stronger at the broken places. Valerian dismissed Constance and her daughters with a wave of his hand. Get out of my sight, he said, his tone carrying the finality of a judge's gavel. Go upstairs. Stay in your rooms. If I hear a single footstep on these stairs before I summon you, I will ensure you experience the same slow decline you gave to Harold Ashford. Are we clear? They fled like rats abandoning a sinking ship. When the sound of their footsteps faded, the dining hall felt different. Larger. Quieter. As if the house itself could finally exhale after holding its breath for years. Valerian gestured to the chair beside him. Sit. Please. Wren hesitated, then moved to the chair. Her legs felt weak, her mind spinning with everything that had just happened. She sat carefully, half expecting the chair to be pulled away at the last moment, another cruel joke in a life full of them. But it held. Valerian snapped his fingers, and Theodoric immediately moved toward the kitchen. You have not eaten properly in quite some time, Valerian observed, studying her with the careful attention of someone cataloging damage. When did you last have a real meal? Wren tried to remember. Days blurred together in the corner. I do not know. Tuesday, maybe. Margot threw me some bread. Threw, Valerian repeated, his jaw tightening. Like one would feed a dog. I have been treated worse than their dogs, Wren said quietly. The dogs sleep in beds. Something dangerous flickered across Valerian's face, but he smoothed it away and leaned back in his chair with theatrical casualness. Well then, we shall have to remedy that immediately. Theodoric is retrieving what remains of the catering these vultures ordered. I assume you have preferences? Or have they beaten the concept of preference out of you as well? The question was asked lightly, but Wren heard the razor edge beneath it. I used to love strawberries, she said, surprised by her own answer. She had not thought about things she loved in so long. Loving things made losing them hurt worse. My mother and I would go to the farmer's market on Forsyth Park every Saturday morning. There was a vendor who grew them organically. We would buy 2 containers and eat half of them before we even got home. Valerian's expression softened. Strawberries. A simple pleasure. The best ones usually are. Theodoric returned pushing a cart laden with food that had been prepared for Constance's wealthy guests. Delicate pastries, fresh fruit, cheeses, carved meats, and desserts that looked almost too beautiful to eat. Set it here, Valerian instructed. And bring a proper chair. Something comfortable. Within moments, the table before Wren was transformed into a feast. The scents alone made her dizzy. Her stomach clenched painfully, reminding her how long it had been since she had eaten anything beyond stale bread and water. Eat, Valerian said simply. Everything on this table is yours now. Wren stared at the food, then at him. I do not understand what is happening. You do not need to understand it yet, Valerian replied. You simply need to eat. We can discuss the complexities of your situation after you have something in your stomach besides grief and starvation. She reached out tentatively and took a strawberry from a crystal bowl. It was perfect. Red and ripe and sweet smelling. She bit into it, and the taste exploded across her tongue like a memory of every good thing she had lost. She closed her eyes and let herself feel it. When she opened them again, Valerian was watching her with an expression she could not quite name. Satisfaction, perhaps. Or something deeper. Better? He asked. Yes, she whispered. Good. Keep going. She ate slowly at first, then with increasing hunger as her body remembered what it meant to be fed. Valerian watched without speaking, occasionally sipping his wine, his presence somehow both commanding and strangely comforting. After several minutes, he spoke again. Tell me about your mother. Wren paused, a piece of cheese halfway to her mouth. Why? Because I want to know, Valerian said simply. And because I suspect no one has asked you about her in a very long time. He was right. No one had spoken her mother's name in this house since Constance had removed all the photographs and donated her belongings to charity. She was beautiful, Wren began softly. Not like magazine beautiful. She had freckles and laugh lines and hands that were always rough from gardening. She loved growing things. Flowers, vegetables, herbs. She said dirt under her fingernails meant she had spent the day creating life. Valerian smiled slightly. She sounds remarkable. She was, Wren said, her voice thick with emotion. She was everything good. When she got sick, she made my father promise he would not fall apart. She made him promise he would find happiness again. I think that is why he married Constance. He was trying to keep that promise. And instead he brought a viper into his home, Valerian observed. He did not know, Wren said, surprising herself by defending him. Constance was different before. She pretended to care about me. She called me her daughter. It was all a performance. Valerian was quiet for a moment, swirling wine in his glass. I have lived 800 years, he said finally. I have seen empires rise and fall. I have watched humanity invent remarkable things and destroy themselves with equal creativity. And in all that time, the one constant truth I have learned is this: people reveal who they truly are when they believe no one is watching. He met her eyes. Constance revealed herself the moment she thought she had complete power over you. That is who she truly is. A small, cruel woman who can only feel powerful by destroying things more beautiful than herself. Wren set down the food, her appetite suddenly gone despite her hunger. Why are you being kind to me? She asked, the question that had been burning in her chest since he first extended his hand. You do not know me. You came here for business, for revenge on my stepfamily. I am nothing to you. Valerian set down his wine glass and leaned forward, his elbows on the table, his white hair falling around his face like a curtain of moonlight. Do you know what I see when I look at you, Wren Ashford? She shook her head. I see a woman who has survived 5 years of systematic torture designed to break her spirit, yet she still has the strength to look me in the eyes without flinching. I see someone who was buried alive and is still breathing beneath the weight of the earth piled on top of her. I see potential that has been wasted, beauty that has been hidden, and a fire that refuses to go out no matter how much water they pour on it. He reached across the table and gently took her hand. His skin was cool, but his grip was steady. I am being kind to you because you deserve kindness. Because cruelty has had its turn, and it failed. And because something in you calls to something in me that I thought had died with my sister centuries ago. Wren felt her breath catch. What is that? Valerian's smile was small and real, and perhaps the first genuine expression she had seen on his face. Hope, he said simply. You make me feel hope. For 3 days, Wren lived in a dream she was terrified to wake from. Valerian had moved her from the corner to a guest suite on the 3rd floor, a room with windows that overlooked the garden and a bed so soft she cried the first night she slept in it. He had doctors examine her, nutritionists plan her meals, and stylists brought in from Atlanta who assured her that hair grew back and beauty was patient. Constance and her daughters remained confined to their wing of the house, forbidden from contact, while Theodoric and his team conducted a thorough investigation into Harold Ashford's death and the foundation's finances. Wren saw Valerian every evening. He would appear at her door precisely at sunset, always impeccably dressed, always carrying some small gift. A book of poetry. A box of strawberries from a specialty farm in California. A vintage record player with albums from the 1970s that her mother had loved. They would talk for hours. He told her stories about centuries she had only read about in textbooks. She told him about her childhood, her dreams of studying art history, her mother's garden that Constance had paved over to install a tennis court. She began to feel something dangerous blooming in her chest. Hope. Connection. Something that felt terrifyingly close to happiness. On the fourth morning, everything shattered. Wren woke to raised voices echoing through the mansion. She pulled on a robe and stepped into the hallway, her heart racing with the old familiar fear that somehow this had all been temporary, that the corner was waiting to reclaim her. She followed the sound to her father's old study. The door was ajar. Inside, Valerian stood over Constance, who was on her knees, her hands bound behind her back with zip ties. Margot and Delia were similarly restrained, both sobbing hysterically. Theodoric stood nearby holding a folder thick with documents. "The evidence is conclusive, my lord," Theodoric was saying. Constance Pruitt purchased arsenic-based rat poison from a hardware store in Puller 6 weeks before Harold Ashford's death. Security footage shows her entering and leaving. The credit card transaction is documented. We also found email correspondence between her and a lawyer discussing strategies for contesting the original will if Harold did not change it voluntarily. Valerian's expression was carved from ice and fury. So she planned it. Methodically. Patiently. Yes, my lord. And the daughters? Were they complicit? They claim ignorance, but financial records show Constance promised them each $2 million from the estate once everything was liquidated. They knew. Margot screamed through her tears. We did not know about the poison. We thought he just died. Mother said it was natural. Ignorance is not innocence, Valerian said coldly. You benefited from murder. You tortured an innocent woman for 5 years. You are guilty. He turned to Theodoric. Prepare them for transport. Take them to the warehouse on River Street. I will deal with them personally after sunset. Wren's blood turned to ice. She knew what that meant. She had heard the stories Valerian told. The warehouse would be where he extracted his revenge. Where he made people pay for their sins in ways that would make them beg for death. She thought of his sister. Of the man he had hunted through 4 generations. She pushed open the door. Wait. Everyone turned. Valerian's expression shifted from cold fury to surprise. Wren. You should not be here. What are you going to do to them? She asked, her voice trembling. What they deserve, Valerian replied simply. Justice. You mean torture, Wren said. You mean revenge. Something flickered in Valerian's eyes. Is there a difference? Yes, Wren said, stepping into the room despite every instinct screaming at her to run. There is. Justice is about truth and consequences. Revenge is about making yourself feel better by making others suffer. Valerian's jaw tightened. They murdered your father. They tortured you for 5 years. They destroyed your life. And you dare defend them? I am not defending them, Wren said, her voice rising. I am defending you. The man I have spent the last 3 days talking to. The man who gave me strawberries and listened to my stories and made me feel human again. That man would not become a monster to punish monsters. The temperature in the room dropped. Valerian moved toward her with the slow, deliberate grace of a predator. You do not know what I am capable of, Wren. You have seen me playing at civility. You have not seen what I become when the mask comes off. Then show me, Wren said, refusing to back down despite the fear coursing through her. Show me this monster you claim to be. Because all I see is someone who is letting 800-year-old pain dictate his choices. The slap of her words hit harder than any physical blow. Valerian stared at her, his ancient eyes swirling with emotions too complex to name. Then Constance, sensing an opportunity in the chaos, made her fatal mistake. Listen to her, Mr. Cross, Constance said, her voice slippery with false contrition. Wren has always been wise. Forgiving. She knows that people make mistakes. That families should forgive each other. Do not let her watch you do something she will hate you for. Wren spun to face her stepmother. Do not use me as a shield. Do not you dare. But Constance had smelled blood in the water. She turned her pleading eyes to Wren. Please, Wren. I know I have been cruel. I know I have done terrible things. But I am still the woman your father married. I am still family. Would your mother want you to stand by and watch us be slaughtered? Would your father? The manipulation was expert. Surgical. And it found its mark. Wren felt something crack inside her chest. Doubt. Confusion. The sickening possibility that maybe Constance was right. Maybe her parents would want mercy. Maybe she was being selfish by allowing Valerian to. Stop, Wren said, her voice breaking. Just stop talking. She looked at Valerian, and he was watching her with an expression she could not read. Let them go, Wren said quietly. The room went silent. What did you say? Valerian asked, his voice dangerously soft. Let them go, Wren repeated, tears streaming down her face now. Turn them over to the police. Give them the evidence. Let the human justice system handle it. Please. Do not make me watch you become what you hate. Valerian stared at her for a long moment. Then he laughed. It was cold and bitter and nothing like the warm sounds she had heard over the past 3 days. You want me to let them go, he said slowly. After everything they have done. After 5 years of torture. After murdering your father. You want me to hand them to a justice system that will give them comfortable prison cells and parole hearings and the possibility of freedom. I want you to be better than them, Wren said desperately. I want. You want a fairy tale, Valerian interrupted, his voice cutting like a blade. You want me to be some reformed monster who learns the power of forgiveness and mercy. You want me to be human. He stepped closer, and for the first time, Wren saw something in his eyes that terrified her. Disappointment. I told you what I am, Valerian said coldly. I told you I do not forgive. I told you I hunt debts through generations. You heard those words and chose not to believe them because I fed you strawberries and listened to your stories. You created a version of me in your mind that does not exist. That is not true, Wren whispered. Is it not? Valerian turned away from her. Theodric, proceed with the original plan. Take them to the warehouse. No. Wren grabbed his arm without thinking. Valerian looked down at her hand on his sleeve, and his expression went utterly blank. Remove your hand, he said quietly. Please, Wren begged. Please do not do this. If you ever cared about me at all. Cared? Valerian turned to face her fully, and the look in his eyes made her stumble backward. You think 3 days of conversation equals caring? You think I feel something for you beyond curiosity and utility? You are a fascinating project, Wren Ashford. A broken thing I considered mending. But you are still just a human girl who understands nothing about the world I inhabit. Each word was a knife finding soft flesh. I thought you were different, he continued, his voice like ice cracking. I thought you had strength beneath the trauma. But you are just like every other weak, sentimental fool who thinks forgiveness heals wounds and mercy changes hearts. You disgust me. Wren felt something inside her break completely. I disgust you. Yes, Valerian said simply. You had a chance to be extraordinary. To stand beside me and watch justice delivered to those who destroyed your life. Instead, you chose to protect your abusers because a dead woman might disapprove. That is not strength. That is cowardice. He turned to Theodric. Get them out of my sight. All of them. My lord, do you mean? I mean all of them, Valerian said coldly, his eyes still locked on Wren. The stepfamily goes to the warehouse. Wren Ashford goes back to her corner. That is where she belongs. That is where she chooses to belong. No, Wren breathed. You cannot. I can do whatever I wish, Valerian said. This is my city. My territory. My world. You are nothing in it. He walked toward the door, then paused. I will leave Savannah tonight. I will never return. And when Constance and her daughters are begging for death in that warehouse, I want you to remember that you could have prevented it with silence. Instead, you chose to wound the only person who saw value in you. He left. The door closed behind him with the finality of a tomb being sealed. And Wren collapsed to the floor, sobbing, while Theodric made a phone call and Constance began screaming and the world she had briefly believed in turned to ash around her. 3 hours passed. Wren sat in her corner, the black dress back on her body like a second skin she had foolishly thought she could shed. The mansion was silent. Constance and her daughters had been taken away in a black van. The servants had vanished. Even the air felt abandoned. She pressed her forehead against the wall and tried to breathe through the crushing weight in her chest. She had ruined everything. No. That was not true. She had revealed everything. Revealed that beneath Valerian's charm and gifts, there was still a monster who would torture 3 women to death because they reminded him of an ancient wound. But was that really what she believed? She thought of his eyes when he talked about his sister. The way his voice had softened when he gave her strawberries. The gentle touch of his hand when he promised she deserved kindness. Had that all been a lie? Or had she broken something real by choosing her abusers over him? Wren stood on shaking legs. She could not let it end like this. She could not let him leave believing she had chosen Constance over him. That was not what she had meant. She had only wanted him to be better than the darkness that consumed him. She ran through the empty mansion, her bare feet slapping against marble, searching for any sign of him. His suite was empty. The dining hall was abandoned. The garden was silent. Finally, she found Theodric loading luggage into the Rolls-Royce in the front drive. Where is he? She asked desperately. Theodric did not look at her. Gone. That is impossible. The car is still here. He has other means of travel, Theodric said coldly. He left on foot 20 minutes ago. Said he needed to clear his head before dealing with the Ashford women. Wren's stomach turned. The warehouse. River Street. Theodric said nothing, which was confirmation enough. Wren turned and ran. River Street was 3 miles away. Her feet were bleeding by the time she reached the tourist district, leaving red prints on the cobblestones. The warehouse district loomed ahead, dark and industrial, a place where screams would go unheard. She found the building by the black van parked outside. The door was unlocked. Inside, she heard Constance sobbing. Wren crept through the shadows, her heart hammering, until she reached a vast open space lit by industrial lights. Constance, Margot, and Delia were chained to metal chairs in the center of the room. Valerian stood before them, perfectly still, his white hair gleaming under the harsh lights. He had not started yet. He was waiting. For what? I know you are there, Wren, he said without turning. Your heartbeat gives you away. She stepped into the light. Please. Do not do this. You already made this argument, Valerian said, still not looking at her. I found it unconvincing. I was not choosing them over you, Wren said desperately. I was trying to save you from yourself. Now he turned, and his expression was carved from marble. Save me? I am 800 years old. I have survived plague, war, revolution, and betrayal. What makes you think I need saving by a girl who cannot even save herself? The words stung, but Wren pushed forward. Because you told me about your sister. Because you shared that pain with me. That means something. It means I was bored, Valerian said coldly. And you were entertainment. Wren felt tears burning her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. She had to try one more thing. One last desperate attempt. She walked forward until she stood directly between Valerian and her stepfamily. If you are going to hurt them, you will have to go through me, she said. Valerian's eyes flashed. Move. No. I will not ask again. Good. I am tired of being told what to do. The silence stretched taut as a wire about to snap. Then Valerian laughed. Dark and bitter and genuinely amused. You would die for them, he said wonderingly. For the women who destroyed your life. Remarkable. I would die for anyone, Wren said quietly. That is what makes me different from you. It was the wrong thing to say. Valerian moved faster than her eyes could track. One moment he was 10 feet away. The next, his hand was around her throat, lifting her off the ground with inhuman strength. Different, he hissed, his face inches from hers. You think your weakness is nobility. You think your inability to hate makes you pure. Let me educate you about the real world, little bird. His grip tightened. Not enough to kill. Just enough to hurt. Your kindness killed your father. If you had been cruel, suspicious, watching for threats, you might have seen what Constance was before she struck. Your mercy right now is killing you. And your forgiveness? He leaned closer, his breath cold against her ear. Your forgiveness is why they will do it again to someone else's daughter. He released her. Wren crashed to the concrete floor, gasping, her hand at her bruised throat. But you have made your choice, Valerian continued, stepping over her like she was debris. So I will make mine. He walked to Constance and pulled out an ornate dagger from his jacket. No. Wren croaked, trying to stand. Valerian raised the blade. Then he cut Constance's bonds. Then Margot's. Then Delia's. The three women stared in shock, rubbing their wrists, not understanding what was happening. Go, Valerian said simply. Leave. Tonight. Leave Savannah and never return. The Ashford estate will be liquidated to pay your debts to my organization. You will have nothing but the clothes on your backs and whatever cash you can scrounge. If I ever see you again, if I ever hear that you have hurt another innocent person, I will find you. And next time, Wren will not be here to save you. Constance scrambled to her feet. The house is mine. The will. The will was forged, Valerian said coldly. Theodoric has already filed the paperwork proving it. The estate reverts to Wren as Harold Ashford's only biological heir. You have 1 hour to pack a single bag each and disappear. The three women ran, stumbling over each other to reach the door. When they were gone, Valerian looked down at Wren, still on the floor, staring up at him in shock. You let them go, she whispered. Yes. Why? Valerian crouched down to her level, and for a moment, she saw something raw in his eyes before he shuddered it away. Because you were right about one thing, he said quietly. I am not them. I am better than them. Not because of mercy or forgiveness or any of the noble concepts you worship. But because I can choose to be cruel, and I can choose not to be. They never had that choice. Cruelty was all they knew. He stood. The estate is yours. The fortune is yours. The life they stole is yours to reclaim. I have given you everything you wanted. He turned to leave. Wait, Wren called out, struggling to her feet. That is it? You are just leaving? Valerian paused at the door. What else is there? You made it clear what you think of me. A monster playing at humanity. And you were right. I was wrong, Wren said desperately. I was scared and confused and I said things I did not mean. No, Valerian interrupted. You said exactly what you meant. And that is why this ends here. He looked back at her one last time, and she saw 800 years of loneliness in his ancient eyes. Goodbye, Wren Ashford. Live your human life. Find your human love. Grow old and die surrounded by the warmth I can never give you. Be happy in all the ways I cannot be. Valerian, please. But he was already gone, vanishing into the shadows like he had never existed at all. Wren stood alone in the empty warehouse, her throat bruised, her feet bleeding, her heart shattered into pieces she did not know how to put back together. She had won everything, and lost the only thing that mattered. Have you ever gotten exactly what you wished for, only to realize it was not what you wanted at all? 6 months passed like centuries. Wren rebuilt her life piece by piece. The Ashford mansion was hers again. The foundation was cleansed of corruption. She had enrolled in art history classes at the Savannah College of Art and Design. Her hair had grown into a soft golden pixie cut that caught sunlight like it was trying to make up for lost time. She should have been happy. She was empty. Every evening at sunset, she found herself looking out the window, waiting for a knock that never came. She kept strawberries in the refrigerator. She played the vintage records he had given her until the vinyl wore thin. She touched her throat sometimes, still feeling the ghost of his fingers there, remembering how even in his rage, he had been careful not to truly hurt her. Tonight was Halloween. The streets of Savannah were alive with ghost tours and costume parties. Wren sat alone in her father's study, now her study, reading a book about Renaissance art that could not hold her attention. Thunder rumbled overhead. A storm was coming. Then the lights went out. Wren stood, her heart suddenly racing. The backup generator should have kicked in immediately. She heard footsteps in the foyer. Slow. Deliberate. Familiar. She ran from the study, her bare feet sliding on the polished floor, and stopped at the top of the grand staircase. He stood in the doorway, rain-soaked and perfect, his white hair dripping water onto the marble, his pale eyes locked on hers. "Hello, little bird," Valerian said softly. Wren's hand went to her mouth. "You came back. I never left." "What?" Valerian stepped inside, and she saw the exhaustion in his movements, the hunger in his eyes. "I have been watching," he admitted. "Every night. Making sure Constance kept her distance. Making sure you were safe. Making sure you were..." "What?" "Happy," he finished quietly. "But you are not happy, are you?" Wren descended the stairs slowly, afraid if she moved too fast he would vanish like a dream upon waking. "No," she whispered when she reached the bottom. "I am not happy." "Why?" She stood before him now, close enough to touch but not daring to reach out. "You know why." Valerian's expression cracked, 800 years of control crumbling in an instant. "I have tried to forget you," he said roughly. "I have tried to convince myself you were just another human, another fleeting moment in an endless existence. But you haunt me, Wren Ashford. Your kindness. Your strength. You're absolutely infuriating me to see good in monsters." "You are not a monster," Wren said firmly. "I am," Valerian countered. "But perhaps I can be your monster." He raised his hand slowly, giving her time to pull away, and touched her cheek. His fingers were cold, but this time, she leaned into them. "I choose you," she whispered. "Not them. Not mercy. Not forgiveness. You. I choose you." Valerian made a sound that might have been a sob or a laugh or something in between. Then he pulled her against him, his arms wrapping around her like he was trying to merge their bodies into one being that could never be separated again. "I love you," he said against her hair. "I have loved you since you looked me in the eyes from that kitchen floor and refused to break. I will love you until the sun burns out and the world goes dark. I will love you beyond death and into whatever comes after." Wren pulled back just enough to see his face. "That is a very long time to love someone." "Not long enough," Valerian said, and then he kissed her. It was gentle and desperate, and 800 years of loneliness finding its home. It was redemption and damnation. It was everything. When they broke apart, Wren was crying and laughing simultaneously. "So what happens now?" she asked. Valerian smiled, and it was warm and real and nothing like the cold thing she had seen in that warehouse. "Now," he said, producing a perfect strawberry from his coat pocket like a magician, "we start over. Properly this time." Wren bit into the strawberry and tasted forever. Outside, thunder crashed and rain poured and the world continued spinning. Inside, a girl who had been forced to live in corners was finally standing in the light, held by someone who had walked in darkness for centuries but was finally ready to step into the sun. Love had found them both. At last. If you made it this far without crying, you are lying to yourself. Hit subscribe right now because you know you need more of these stories in your life. Do not ghost me after I just poured my soul into this tale. Tell me in the comments where you watched this from, because I know this story reached someone who needed to hear that love finds us even in our darkest corners. And listen, if you think this story was emotionally twisted, the next one will absolutely destroy you in the best way possible. I am talking about a vampire prince, a betrayed bride, and a revenge plot that spans 3 centuries. Click the image on your screen right now to watch it. Trust me, after what we just shared, you need to see what happens next. Do not leave me hanging. Click it. Now.